Okay, we are now live. Welcome to Ruby Monday, September 21st, 2015. We are discussing our second project that we're about to start. If you are viewing this live or in a future viewing, you're always welcome to find out in the Code Newbie Slack channel. And my name is Farish Kashfinajad. I am a consultant, mainly networks and websites. I'm also an advisor at Code Academy. And let's go around the board and see who we have new. Okay, we have Hassim is new and Derek is new.
Hashim, yeah.
Hashim, okay. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm living in LA, systems admin by day, and I'm trying to learn Ruby on Rails, and Ruby as well, since the last couple of months.
Okay. What do you system in admin, Windows or Linux?
Windows, but and Linux both, because we have a couple of systems running Windows, a couple in Linux.
Oh, okay. You're nearby. One other thing I would say, you're nearby Santa Monica, and there's a big startup community out there, and it's building up. They want to call it Silicon Valley by the beach. And,
Silicon Beach.
Valley by the beach, basically, is what they want to start calling it. That's a good location to be, so you can meet startups, and once you get your skills up to the point and looking to expand, or if you plan to stick with your own job, your current job, that's fine too. Okay, we have Derek. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hey there, I'm currently at a bar in the Minneapolis airport, but I thought I would try and see if I could get this to stream out over here. So I am a full-time remote developer for a company out of Salt Lake City called Instructure, but my hometown right now is Rapid City, South.
I think he cut out.
Terribly sorry.
Does the bar have good drinks?
Yes, I have a black and tan right now.
Okay. Newcastle or just?
I think it's Guinness and Smittix.
Oh, okay. My wife's a Guinness lover, but I'm more Newcastle person myself. Okay, I think that covered everybody. So we're here to continue discussing the new project. I'm not sure really where to begin. We had the names. It looks like somebody tried to cheat the name system and did multiple votes. It was not me. I like Get Committed, but I really don't care. I just want to work on a new project. That's how I am. But if somebody wants me to take the blame for it, I will fall on the sword for them. No big deal either way. So let's talk about the new project besides the name. If somebody wants to go over what was finally decided and what we were going to cover, somebody wants to volunteer.
I'll do it.
Okay.
Okay, so pretty much what we decided was that it's going to be kind of like a social media site for all of your different coding adventures on the internet to compile into one place. You know, to show how far you've gotten on your GitHub. You know, how many commits you have, like what your streak is, and how many things you've completed on Code Wars or Code Academy, and all those different things. And so we were going to use APIs to do that, which was one of the things that the group really wanted to do. And potentially build an API. I'm not really sure where we stand on that still, but that was also another thing that was brought up. And I guess the name is still pending, but it was going to basically, you could cheer people on as they come up on your feed, and it's kind of a way to show your progress without spamming the rest of the world with coding stuff. Did that sum it up? I don't know.
That actually sounded really good to me. It was the gist of what I had, but I wasn't sure how to explain it clearly. I think the other thing we were talking about is we mentioned some sites that we were going to use, from GitHub to Code Wars and a couple others, and we were considering maybe dividing each section, each site to a group of 2 or 3 members so they each have a part to work on. I don't know how that sounds to you guys, but like one person could be the GitHub API group, another one could be Code Wars, etc. And then when we finish those 3, we can move on to the next set of APIs we want to integrate. And then we have to come up with, I believe, some sort of gamification system. That was part of the discussion, that we basically wanted to really gamify this thing, give achievements, stuff like that, and then maybe match up fellow people on pairing programming, maybe from people who are similar in skill or people who are high in skill and willing to help a person low on skill. So we're kind of at this point. What do you guys feel we should choose next to move this along? Should we pick our specific APIs we want to start with? Do we want to start with the foundation, how we're going to approach it? Are we going to have an authentication system? Let's start getting this together and take it from there. What suggestions do you all have?
So I think we should just like commit on a name, like, because that's like the least important at this point. And then just so we can move forward, I'd say like we just we need to prioritize the feature list. So figuring out like what the most important critical features are to get to make it into version 1.0, and then open up issues and start coding.
Yeah, well, do we care about a name at this point? Honestly, I know we want a name, but do we care?
I mean, I guess we don't. I mean, if we're going to open up a repo, it'd be nice to just keep it at whatever name.
Angel already made a repo. Let me go grab that link. He called it Ruby committed, but he didn't. That's not the name. That's what he named the repo. And I think that basically works because it's some word of committed is going to be part of the name, I believe. Didn't 2 or 3 of the choices have that? Anybody have a summary of what the choice was? Because I really didn't want to screw around with the poll. I just put my name in the Slack channel. I'm looking right now.
It looks like it was code together, get together, committed, and let's commit.
Thought there was a git committed too. I agree. Alan, I think I responded to that. Okay, where's my git committed? Well, now I'm displeased. Really am. Actually, I'll vote for committed. And we'll just get that out of the way. And I guess the name will be committed for now, because that has the majority of votes. For whoever cheated, shame on you. We're sending the FBI after your IP address. I hope you use a VPN like I do.
First, can I ask something?
Yes.
This name "Get Together" sounds like "Get Together" for English people. For you, it's like I don't know how to call it. It's like "Get Together."
Right, right. I'm looking at the other screen. I have 2 monitors here.
It sounds like I will ask it the text.
But right now, committed is the highest vote. It just has to be spelled correctly, as Alan mentioned.
If it sounds like "Get Together," I would vote for "Get Together," but I think it's it lost the vote now.
Well, there were 0 people voting. So right now, if you add your vote on there, it's
One.
1, and it's still behind by 9 other votes. So I don't think we have to worry about that name at all. The one thing I think, and I added your vote in, on the get together, it kind of sounded like a bad dating site. And maybe that's what turned people off. And like, let's commit, that sounds like marriage. And I'm married, so I already have to deal with that torture in my life. Sorry, wife, if you ever watch this. But some people might not like that. So right now, okay, we have 2 votes for get together, 2 votes for code together. I think we're going to stick with committed. We'll see if that changes. Let's see. Unfortunately, the GitHub branch is misspelled. Do I have permissions to edit this thing? Can you edit a repo, or do I have to make a new repo under Code Nobis?
I think you just make a new one. Let's see.
Here, you know what? I don't have permissions for Code Newbies. I have permissions for Ruby Newbies. By the way, if any of you are familiar with Brian Lamar's site, rubynewbies.org, he was the second podcast on the website. And that's how I found Code Newbies, and I kind of followed his journey to learn programming. I've basically taken over the whole thing. I have the domain now, the Slack channel. I'll probably do some stuff to get involved with that and kind of bring that back to the level it used to be with a lot of activity. But that'll be a project down over the next couple months. And if anybody's interested, let me know on that. I can't create a new repo. I'll ask Saran if she will change those permissions for me. But for right now, we'll wait until the repo gets going. So now that we're kind of close to deciding the name, let's start with the foundational stuff. Let's pick probably 2 or 3 APIs, and maybe we have to do a vote if there's more than 3. And take that and see what we want to work with. We talked about GitHub. We talked about Code Wars. Was there a few others? I'm kind of fuzzy today. I've had a long work day. Was exorcism on the list for that? You know, I would wait. Katrina Owen was in our channel because she was close to quitting her job, and she was going to refocus her time on exorcism because it was important to her, because she felt like it was falling behind. I don't know if she's going to make big changes. What I would also say, if you guys want, I had an opportunity a few months ago to help her with it, but I felt I wasn't ready, so I was kind of intimidated, and I never did. But she might be looking for some help too if you guys have free time on getting that up to par. I don't know about exorcism. Any other website suggestions? Stack Exchange? Okay, you know, I'm going to start adding notes. So let's make a new note. And we have GitHub itself. We have Code Wars. We have Stack Exchange. So what would we do when you help answer a question? Sites that have Abanoa, sites to add. Are you getting background noise from me? I have a fan going. I can turn that off. That's not an issue. Okay, right now, what we have is we have a list of that's the fan. That is the fan. That's exactly what you're hearing. I'll adjust that in a minute. Basically, what we're trying to do here is, now we got my. Basically, what we got here is we want to pick some sites that offer API that involve coding, and we want to take that and make like a gamification website with the results from the websites. The talks were GitHub, Code Wars, somebody mentioned Exorcism, Stack Exchange, Bitbucket, any website that offers an API where we can access it and see user activity. Especially a site like Stack Exchange, where there's a lot of activity, or Code Wars, where you have to do katas among everything else. I'll be right back. Okay. So that should fix that noise. Yeah, it wasn't just GitHub. We're picking multiples because what we want to do is kind of make this modular. And I'll add HackerRank. Isn't HackerRank more of a testing site? I don't recall. Something I didn't like about HackerRank, if I remember right. I could be wrong. Do they have an API that lets us view it?
Farish,
Yeah.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Could you please give an example of what kind of data or I mean, what kind of APIs are we trying to hit from each of these sites? What kind of data are we trying to extract from them? And an example would be a good thing to get us probably understand what we're trying to use.
Okay, I'll give you an example. On Code Wars, there's a kata. If you pass the test, you pass the kata. So what we want to do is if the user passes a kata, in Code Wars it says you pass the next kata, go to the next test. We want to kind of give a user points for that. And as they get points, they earn achievements. Oh, you got 1,000 points. You get the Mega Cool Dude achievement.
Okay.
Does
And
that make sense?
yeah, but how do you do this with multiple sites like GitHub, Bitbucket, as well as CodeWars all together?
How would we do that? Well,
Yeah.
basically, we would have to send a request, probably a background job, for each different site for API when the user logs in, maybe an update.
Okay. My question is more on the metrics you would use for GitHub as well as Bitbucket. Like for CodeWars, we know that we have challenges that we could go through and finish.
Maybe GitHub, how many repos you do, how many commits you make. Remember, we're not making this. We're making this like a real site, but what we're looking for is creating a function from an API call. So we can base it on commits or pull requests that were merged.
Okay. Okay.
And Jesus is mentioning what I described sounds like a copy of code or
Okay,
sorry, I got dogs that are barking.
thanks.
Do you think since we're such a small team, we should pare down to a smaller list, do GitHub, Bitbucket, because that's where the code is getting dumped to, and then start with Code Wars, because that allows us to pair up people?
Well, I was thinking there's usually 10 of us. So if you do 3 APIs, that would be a group of 3, basically 3 teams of 3 and a 4th person floating around maybe.
Right, exactly.
More. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking a 3. Let's create 3 groups, each working on a different API call section, and then we could come together on the front end.
Yeah, I agree. Because the whole point is this pair up, so we're going to have teams anyway.
Right, exactly. That's the whole idea about this.
Yep.
Is kind of do it like a team would in working a dev job. And then maybe we'll make up badges and other stuff. Titles, Coder King, who knows? So I don't know if anybody has any other sites to suggest to add on this list. Or do you guys just want to stick with what we know? Code Wars, GitHub, and Bitbucket right now and then expand from there?
I think we could do what we have and expand from there, but I think we should also look at places like Code Academy and stuff like that that tracks not just coding progress, but like how much you're learning too. But that could be phase 2. But eventually, I think we need to get there.
You know what the problem, I would say the only issue I see is, let's say you make a commit. You don't know if the person's quote-unquote learning anything. They just made a commit. It could be past knowledge. The only site where you would see some kind of learning or skill level in that sense is Code Wars, because it is a coding challenge, and maybe that's how we'll expand it, by looking at other sites that do coding challenges like that. One idea as an example, but in a different format, is there's a program in a website called Habit RPG, and basically it's a productivity tool where you basically work on your schedule and other items, and you gain points every time you complete a task. And you gain avatars, and you get different looks. And it's a similar concept, and it's something you guys might want to look at as a reference of what we're trying to create, but not as high as a level. And as I mentioned earlier, Coder Wall, and I'll put that in the chat notes, is like that too. So how do we want to assign teams? Do we want to do it random? Arm wrestle? Any thoughts?
I think Jesus should build another voting app.
Well, I like the idea of random, and I only say this because sometimes if people get picked in a certain order, especially with the way imposter syndrome hits people, they might get feelings hurt, even though it's unintentional. Flip a coin, roll a dice, I don't know. The other thing is we can just say, okay, somebody picks something and other people can jump in, and once the spot's filled up, you need to pick a different project. First comes, first serve.
How do we handle the people who want to take part but that are not in this group of 10 who, just for luck of the draw, they're number 11, but they didn't make the chat room on time? How do we handle that? Like,
we'll probably stick with the idea of 3 teams and have them bigger than expected, and then maybe within they can do their own hangout and go together.
but then try and find a way to keep those teams balanced, right? You don't want, if there's 7 other people, you don't want them all jumping on one team.
You know what? That's very possible. I would say what we would do is, let's say the max size is 4, and then if it goes beyond that, whoever's, let's say, that extra 5th person, they get to choose, and then nobody can go into the group. They have to go into other groups. And if they're not interested, unfortunately, we're trying to set this up as a balance so they can work with that group. And it'll probably actually work out better that way. Now, Amanoa asks, just to make sure I'm understanding, after gamification, we're going to compete. We're not going to compete. We're going to give badges and stuff like that. We're not doing competition, but what we're going to do is see if people want to match with people of equal skill sets or skill sets that are less than them, so they can help somebody get better. Because I'll tell you right now, I'm going to lose. I'm not looking to compete. I'm just looking at code.
Well, that's the point. We were going to allow other people, including not in this group, use this tool. So you don't have to be part of this group to compete in the katas. Then that's any other group. This is not just locked down. The usage will not be locked down to Ruby Monday. We're just going to build it. And we even talked about pairing up with the Java folks.
You're right. Maybe down the road, once we built the foundation, because they're learning to React.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Teamwork.
So I guess so. I'm a little I'm not sure confused as far as what the core of the product is. But I feel like we're almost by hyper focusing on APIs and saying right out of the bat, let's pick 3 APIs and split into 3 teams. But we're almost chasing the technology versus actually deliberately and thoughtfully going through the user flow and what the user experience is going to be. I would like to figure out more what's the core feature set. Forget about the APIs.
Okay, let's do that for a moment. Let's forget about the APIs. Let's discuss what you said exactly. What we're basically doing. Do any of you guys have Xbox or Sony PlayStation? Please don't tell me I'm the only person with an Xbox here.
I don't.
I do.
Okay.
Had one years ago.
They have a thing called Xbox Live. And when you play a game, if you do something in the game, you get achievement points. Some of the achievement points could be doing something like getting your character at level 10. Some of the achievement points happen because you did something very rare and hard to do in the game. That's kind of what we're building here, and then we're adding a compare feature. Find people who have similar skill sets as you, or help people who have lower skill sets than you. Does that make sense?
The main point that you were alluding to with the Xbox thing, but maybe I think some people are getting stuck on, is that those achievement points and stuff are cross-platform, cross-language, everything. They're just compiled into one place. Like, one place is taking stock of everything else, but it's not like you're getting points for doing all these different things in different places, but it's showing in one place.
Exactly, and that's what we're kind of building. And I want to add to that. You get achievement points for playing different games. Well, in this scenario, each game is one of these sites with APIs we're choosing, like GitHub, like Code Wars, like Bitbucket. And the user experience in this situation is basically logging in and getting their rank and seeing that, oh, their rank went up because they just did 20 commits on GitHub. Their rank went up because they completed 5 katas in Code Wars. So you can think of it like a leaderboard. Does that come across better, Alan?
I mean, it does. I mean, I understand like a fuzzy concept of like, you know, how this is going to turn out. But I mean, like each of these APIs can have like hundreds, if not thousands, of endpoints. Like GitHub, for example, there's like thousands of data points you could pull. But if we don't have like that core feature set of like, hey, this is how the app actually works, and here's the data that we're going to need, then you're not really programming your API calls with any context, or really you're just kind of like pulling data just to pull data, right? I mean,
Well, I think
to me, it makes sense to
what
build
we
out.
got to kind of do is look at the actual API and pick 2 or 3 things. Like we were talking about with GitHub, using commits. We weren't talking about going through the whole API experience. We were talking about just looking at commits and giving points for commits.
Yeah, I think we covered this last week. The whole goal is to see how active you are with committing code. That's feature 1. And there's 2 places where you dump code, Bitbucket and GitHub. So you'll be able to log in and see how actively Alan is committing code. And if we want to pair Alan with somebody else, we don't want to pair Alan with someone who writes code once a month, because Alan's going to get frustrated because Alan's like busting his butt committing code every day. So we need to be able to see how active Alan is in his Git commits, and then we assign him achievements. And we're going to pair him with people with like-minded achievements. And the same thing with the Code Wars. If Alan has strong skill set in Ruby by doing his katas on Code Wars, we don't want to pair him with an iOS coder who wants nothing to do with Ruby. So we need those APIs to get skill sets. We can test activity and we can test skill sets and rank them in some sort of gamification way.
Jesus asked a question, will old commits and actions count or just the new ones? I'm not sure how you guys want to approach that. Chances are they'll have to count. And it'll be just a basis of a starting point with points. And it'll be uneven, but we're not looking for even. We're looking for people's activity. And Alan, did what Victor say explain it to you better?
I completely understand. It's just that what I'm trying to argue is that we should build the platform first before we reach out to the APIs. It's kind of like Amazon. You build like the marketplace first before you like link with the other vendors, right?
I'm going to make one argument. You can't build a platform without knowing the APIs you want to pull. Like I have a gem that I haven't published. It is Diablo, another game, Diablo 3. And on this gem, I can get through their Blizzard Battle.net tag. I can pull their profile, divide their heroes, and do all these other things, manipulate data, pull up their gear, other items, their characters' names. I can't do that without knowing what the API does first, though, because I don't know what I'm looking for. So you have to kind of interact with the APIs in the beginning so we know what we're looking for. So in some ways, you have to build your code and platform around the APIs you want to work with. And part of the idea is we're going to look at what the APIs offer us and then build from there. Because real life project, uncle of mine, he has a software that integrates with a popular, I can't go into specifics, accounting system. You can guess what it is. Super popular, probably the most sold one in the world. The only way he could build this project was by looking at the accounting system and see what kind of API calls he could make. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. He could build the platform, but what if he built the platform wrong because the APIs wouldn't present the data he thought he would? He could. So you have to take that into account. I don't know how else to explain it, but you kind of have to know what you're dealing with the data.
So is what you're proposing just going out, splitting into teams, going out, doing recon on these APIs, coming back with a list of data that we can pull and would be something that we could contribute to this product, and then start building the platform and integrating the APIs from there?
We don't need the team. I don't know if we need the teams yet, in the sense of, because we're not programming it yet. We do need some people to research the API though, and tell us, hey, this is what we can use. This looks interesting. I don't care how many issues, let's say, a person posted. It's not as interesting as how many commits they did on the specific project.
One quick question. This is going back to what Alan was talking about. Do we want a fourth team that does handle just the UI, user experience, logging in? That's not part of any of those APIs or any of those feature build-outs. Do we need a team that handles that as well?
We might. The only thing I would say is how do I think of this? We're going to need a front-end team to put it all together, but I was thinking, it might look ugly this way, that each team that handles the API can put together what methods are available, and then we could meet and discuss how we're going to put it all together, and then maybe go into a front-end team. Here's the challenge of this versus a blog. Everybody knows what a blog is. In some ways, we're building something new and different from what most people have dealt with. Yes, it exists in a sense, but like some of you haven't even experienced it, so you're not sure how to approach it. So it's that same kind of concept. It is kind of new and different. Maybe I should have you guys all play Xbox or something.
I feel like for now we could just, for the purpose of visualizing things, just say, it's a Twitter clone that only tweets your accomplishments on these different sites. Like, if that helps us get started, would that help as a starting point?
They have to answer that. For me, that makes perfect sense in a sense. Makes perfect sense.
I mean, obviously, once we got it like up and ready, we could customize it, but just for the sake of getting something visualized and something done, and not needing to have that much front end work.
I think one of the things we talked about was having it automatically send a tweet when you did something. I just did this kata, tweet it. I just did this commit, tweet it. My pull request got accepted, tweet it.
And I think we voted that down, actually.
Okay, I don't recall. So any questions so far? Any concerns? I know that opens up a can of worms, but that's part of this, part of the learning experience.
I have a question.
Okay.
How do you plan to generalize the points rewarding system? For example, in GitHub, I could probably just make a commit to my personal website, or probably just to my .files repository. How do we,
Well, here's one of the things that I want to know, and I was going to ask once we start looking at APIs. Does GitHub have a way to flag open source sites in their API? I don't know this, like Rails, like Spree. And if you make a commit to that, you give them more points versus a commit to, oh, look, I made a hello world.
I haven't thought about that. I spend about 95% of my time on private repos. Basically, all my code. I think I have one public project. All of my code then would not count.
Now, here's my question on the private repo. Do you have to put in, because now this might add complications, do you have to put in a private API key for us to pull it?
With that, we're going to have to check that Bitbucket API, because that's where I keep all my private repos, and they're for paying customers. So yeah, I would have a problem with that.
If this is private, we might not be able to pull that unless you give us your API key.
I'd be interested to find that out, so I would like to look at the APIs and see what's available to us. It might be a moot point. It might be where Bitbucket's just not going to work. I'm going to lose this game.
Well, yeah, or the idea is maybe part of this is because we are part of an open source community, only open source stuff counts. And if it's private, tough.
Well, I think it's easy to say when you're part of the public community, when you spend most of your time making money on private repos. You don't feel the same way. God knows I don't.
It's terrible. But sometimes that might be the case. Especially if you can't access that anyways.
No, then it's a moot point. I agree. If it can't be accessed, I would agree wholeheartedly. If it can be accessed, then to discount all that experience would be foolish of a community that's based on learning.
No, I absolutely agree. We got to find out if we can access it.
Could there maybe be a function where you can manually input stuff like that, like for private repos?
We got to find out if we can, if they give us an option to access it. It might be quite possible that GitHub and Bitbucket require a API key to be used when you access a private repo. A specific API key. And then the person would have to decide if they want to use that. Because I don't know when you use that what security implications are involved, because you want to keep your private repo private, and we are pulling data from it. So where do we go from here, guys? Do we want to talk up? I mean, we have an idea of what APIs we're going to look at. Do people just want to look at the APIs and meet back next week, talk about it? Do people want to add? Because Alan mentioned some very legitimate concerns.
First, I would like to make a comment about my Moinish. We could add some kind of calculation for weighting. I don't know how to say it, how a comment is pointed. Because if you, as he said, if you open a new repo like a Hello World and do commits over there, we could, for example, put multiplication with the number of forks a repo has, public forks. If some repo is more forked, then this commit is more important, like this.
Right.
When there's more points.
We're going to have to figure out how to make a weighted system, which adds some math to this. And we got to see if the API gives us an option to make a weighted system. And that's going to be a really big concern, because I don't know if we can do a weighted system that's what we would feel be fair. And what we might have to do, for the argument's sake of making the project, make a weighted system, that's not really fair. Sounds terrible, but it's true. Some in Xbox, some achievements are worth more points than others, and that involves difficulty. I know with code katas, there are higher difficulty katas. We can easily give higher rated points for that. But we have to see if the API even lets us know if it's a higher difficulty kata.
Are we going to do like a overall score?
I think we will, yeah.
Because I think it will be hard to value a code kata solution with a GitHub commit. How do you compare the value of those two things?
Well, that's where you would have to come up with an arbitrary number. It's going to sound terrible. It might be that 30 commits equals 1 pass code kata as part of the weighted system.
I think we need an easier project.
If we need an easier project, no, I'm
Yeah, Victor.
guys, if this project seems too complicated, there's nothing wrong at this point to going up to Angel and saying, hey guys, we might have picked a really complicated project. We're not sure if this is the kind of thing we can do during our normal 8-week or so time frame. I would say, and I think Alan mentioned this before, when we were working on the Ruby Monday blog, there was a lot of complexity we could have added to it just doing a blog. And it was pretty neat, actually, what you can do and how complicated you can make a blog behind the scenes. And when I say complicated, I don't mean it difficult. I mean just nuances with the programming and how in the beginning, I had learned about N+1 issues, but I had forgotten about it. I didn't even think about it.
And that's what I mean by
Stuff like that.
coding style or how difficult the code is going to be. Just an easier project to get our minds wrapped around that we can execute on. The whole goal is to learn. I think we should lose sight of that.
I do want to stick with one thing, though, and if you guys disagree with this, I'll do whatever the group wants. There's so much work to be done with APIs, whether connecting or generating. I do like to stick with that theme.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Me personally, I'm tackling something difficult because I'm nuts. I'm working on my own project management. And when I started, I go, you know what, this is going to take a while. What can I use right now? So I'm working first because I have clients. I'm working on my own invoicing system as part of the project management program because my Mac invoicing program stinks. It is one of the worst products I've ever dealt with. And what I found out is most Mac invoicing programs just stink. So
what if as a pared down project we just do a Twitter clone that essentially tweets every time you make a commit from GitHub, and you can log in with your GitHub account. And
I like the idea of logging in with your GitHub account. I like the idea of using is it OAuth?
I think GitHub uses OAuth, don't they?
I like the idea because I haven't dealt with that. I like ideas of things I've never done before. Might do it your own authentication with this device. Maybe OAuth is easy, but I still like to do it. So that sounds great to me also.
Because I think we're getting too far into the weeds here with like points and stuff. Like, we don't need to be worrying about that right now. We just need to be worrying about how to get all this stuff in one page, and then we can start ranking, and then we can start doing achievements. Okay. But I feel like right now it should just all just like depositing activity into one place and not necessarily ranking it right now, just having it in one place and being able to see it and share it with other people. But it doesn't need all the bells and whistles. Like if we just want to do APIs, then we can just pull data and just push it back out instead of trying to make that into a point or 2 points or an achievement or whatever.
What I would like to do, even though I understand it's easy, I also like to take whatever the user feed is and send it out as an API. Are you guys okay with that as JSON data, just to work with it?
Yeah, I think that's something that we talked about doing.
How do you guys feel about toning this down a little bit, since it was getting more and more complicated now that we started talking about it?
Can I make a suggestion? So I once saw an application that grabs a lot of GitHub data from your profile, and it just build an English text with something like, as I said, I spend most of my time programming in C, Java, but this is dynamic text grabbed from the GitHub API, and it renders a kind of curriculum. This is the simplest way to try to understand the GitHub API and give a result without interacting with it.
I think it cut out. But I understand your point. What you were saying, I believe, before you cut out, was that basically we connect to the GitHub API and it just broadcasts, hey, I spend most of my time in Ruby. I think it's going to be very similar as sending out a tweet.
Yes, but there's not the complication of authenticating to Twitter.
But we want to add some complication, though. We don't want the project overwhelming, but we do want some complication. I think like on Saron's website, on CodeNewbie, we log in with GitHub. Or was it Twitter? It's one of the two. And I've seen a lot of websites where you can log in with Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, Google+. So I do like keeping that in there, that option. And then we could, roll our own on top of it.
Okay.
So nobody really answered. Are we okay with toning this down a little bit?
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, me too.
Alan?
I'm okay with whatever.
Okay. And then now when we did Ruby Monday blog, I kind of wrote like a whole bunch of user stories. Does anybody else want to do that? And throw out some ideas? Or I can start to do that too. I've been bugging Saron so I can learn how she does Trello, because her thought process is really interesting from what I saw. But I'm also going to start watching some Trello tutorials too. I think she said that ThoughtBot had taught her a way to think when it comes to approaching those projects. And from what I caught, I was really interested in that thought style. Okay, so I could write up user stories next week. Well, you know what? Abhinav just asked, do we plan to split up the group? I don't know, because now we've reduced the complexity. We'll see what happens. I don't know because it might not be that. Uh, let's start first with what we can get from GitHub and take it from there. I don't know if we necessarily need two teams for Twitter API and GitHub API. I'm not sure. I really don't know without looking at it. You know, Victor, I've seen that article. I'm actually a proud subscriber of ThoughtPod Upcase. Great material, great content. I'm when it comes to these kind of situations, I'm better visually than.
I got you. She sent me that article after you and I talked to her about it. She said she sent me that, and I've set my boards up based on that article, and it's working fantastically.
I'll definitely give that a try. I want to put that in the notes.
And you got like screenshots on what the boards look like. It's fairly straightforward.
Right. You know, I wish. I'll check. Maybe they have video on it. Like, if you guys have $29 to spend on a learning resource, even if it's for a few months, Upcase is amazing. I think that they're better. Once you go through the majority of the products, you can drop it down to $9 for the weekly iteration. But what they present is much better than most other companies. The only complaint I would have is their Ruby and Ruby on Rails is outdated material. I think it's Ruby on Rails 3.
This is a basic board.
And Alan mentioned Go Rails. I just set up my Linux server based on Go Rails. I bought it's a website called Clouded Costs, and they had a launch party 2 years ago, but they always have sales. So I have a little VPS that I paid $17 for the lifetime for. Maybe they count on people not using it much, but I'm finally getting around using it just for testing. And if for $17 for life, it's pretty reasonable. And since we're on the subject of Go Rails and ThoughtBot, I was going to say, now I blanked out. Railscast, even though it's outdated, for the Pro, it's a one-time $9 charge. And even though the coding is outdated, a lot of the material and what he teaches you still works today. Yes, well, it's $9 till he might start up again. You never know. He said hi on Twitter for the first time about 6 months ago in 2 or 3 years. So who knows? Maybe he'll come back. I really, I hate to say this, I wasn't really into Ruby Tapas that much.
Have you tried the Code School Ruby paths or Rails paths?
I actually, a year ago, right before I got started, a year ago, they had a promotion, pay for a year for $199. I did. Majority of the materials outdated. The Rails 4.4 Outlaws is when you're on to up-to-date material. But the only thing I say, I learned some. The best course I've ever had from there was their regex course, which just came out, and I think because it was new, fresh, and they approached it a little differently. I would do Code School for a month or two. I wouldn't pay for a year. I think the material comes out too slow. ThoughtBot, at least, with going through their Upcase stuff, gives you a weekly video. That is, bar none, amazing. Okay, guys, so any other questions before we wrap this up? I could come up with user stories next week. Maybe we'll go over a presentation, how to do a user story, even though I'm not the best person for that. Abanoa just asked, could I sum up the text up on the chat. I'm going to do that in Slack. Since nobody has the broadcast, people can't see the chat over here, the group chat. One other thing I want to ask, I had mentioned a few times about material design with Rails over the last 4 months. Has anybody gotten that to work?
Which library?
Material design for Rails? I can't think of what it was called. Put the link a few times.
So there's a few. There's like Materialize CSS. There's Material Design Lite, which is made by the folks at Google. There's also Material Design or Bootstrap Material Design, which is a open source project. So there's easily like 3 like solid ones, and then like a whole following maybe like 7 to 10 of other ones.
The other thing I found, because I started to look into React, is there's actually a framework that's built off React for material design. So I might play around with that. I was just wondering if anybody got to work well with Rails and make it look like material design. But probably by the time I learn that, the trend will be over and something new will be out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've used it with some success, but I think that like it's not specific to Rails, right? And I think like the most useful jump I've had is just for front end assets. I completely forego the asset pipeline. I just use Bower. So like my gem file will be all my backend dependencies, so stuff like devise or like pundit or all that stuff. And then for front end, I'll just completely skip the asset pipeline and sprockets, and then just use Bower to download all the front end libraries, and it's awesome.
It's easier to manage than using the asset pipeline, I take it.
It's harder to set up, but once you know how to do it, you can do it like a million times over. But it's so much easier. So it's like I'd say like the intermediate ways to do it is like you can use like Bower Rails, where you set up, instead of a gem file, you use what's called the Bower file. You can also use Rails assets, where it's like it goes through like a proxy to pull your front end stuff. Yeah, so it looks like Moniz just posted it there. If you want like the latest and greatest, I can't recommend using Bower enough. I mean, it's also platform independent. So if whether you're using like Node.js or PHP or whatever, like Bower's the way to go.
You know what? The one thing in my coding journey that I disliked about Rails is the asset pipeline. I feel like it adds more headaches to what web programming should be. Like Rails, everything's nice and easy, and then you get this asset pipeline. To me, like it doesn't feel like the Rails way. It feels like a drive you nuts way. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm sorry, Victor, that you love it. To tell you the truth, sometimes I thought, why did I learn this? I should just focus on Angular and Node. Okay, so I think that's basically it. We're going to call it a wrap. We're going to tone down the project a little bit. We're going to, I'll work on user stories for next week, and we'll take it from there. Also, guys, you're always welcome to add changes to the Ruby Monday blog. Just because we're focusing on this project, it doesn't mean we have to be done with that. And if anybody wants to come up with ideas to give people things to do with the Ruby Monday blog, it is open for that. Just keep hammering at it. I'm going to stop the broadcast.